Oftentimes you need to dynamically create visualizations with Reveal. So for example, in this sample, I'm dynamically generating grids based on either custom queries or tables that are on my server. I'm using the Reveal SDK DOM to do this. The SDK DOM is a library on the Reveal BI GitHub org, which allows you to programmatically work with Reveal dashboard objects. So for example, you can dynamically create dashboards in memory. You can add visualizations. You can remove visualizations from existing dashboards. You can modify existing dashboards in any way that you'd like. What I'm doing is I am creating new dashboards with grid visualizations. In this README for the Reveal SDK DOM, you can see a basic implementation of adding a new pie chart visualization to an rdash document. So the code is creating a REST data source, it's setting some properties and fields, then it is adding a pie chart visualization to the rdash document that was created at the top of the code, and then we determine what are the labels and values that we want to set for this pie chart, we save it, and then we render it out. In my case, for my dynamic grid loading, I'm simply creating data grids based on whatever happens to be in this select. How does that work? If we jump over to Visual Studio Code, I have a .NET Core application. This is using that Reveal SDK DOM .NET library. We also have it as a TypeScript library. So if you're using Node.js or you want to do things client-side, you can do it in TypeScript. But my key driver here is, what do I want to load up into that combo box on my client? So I have a list of either tables or custom queries that I want to execute. So this is just a list. This could be something stored in your database. Wherever you happen to get the information that you want to create tables with, you can set up in your own code. So here I have a type which is driving what's going to happen in the code. So if we jump over to Program CS, you'll see this is a typical Reveal setup. I have my add Reveal. I'm using the authentication provider, the data source provider, and I'm using SQL Server as my data source. So what am I doing first? First, in my client, I am getting those tables from my allowedtables.json, and I'm just returning that to the client, and that will populate that combo box. Now, when a user selects an item from the combo box, we are executing the dashboard/table name endpoint. What's happening is we are going to accept the underlying table name, not the friendly name. So if we look at our allowed tables, we have a friendly name which was displayed in the combo, but I want to get this table name. This table name is going to be acted upon based on if the type is a query or if the type is a table. So if it's a table, I'm going to go through one path. If it's a custom query, I'm going to go through another path. So you'll see here for my tables, these are just the names of views that are in my SQL Server. So I've created a bunch of custom views with complex queries. These are in my SQL Server database. So let's go back to Program CS and we just check to make sure that I can find the table. Based on the type, we are a query or a table, we need to get the field names. So the key to generating any visualization in Reveal is you need the schema. So that's going to take an extra query to your database to pull out what those field names and field types are, because that's what fills up that schema list in Reveal in the editor, and that's what ends up in the rdash file. So if you unzip an rdash and you look at the dashboard.json, you'll see that each visualization has the fields list, the fields types, etc. So to get the fields list from a custom query, there is a stored procedure called describe first result set. And what that will do is it will take in the query that I'm passing it. What is my query? Well, my query is getting pulled in from my allowedtables.json, and then I'm building out this columns collection, and I'm going to store that. Otherwise, if it is a table, I'm just using the information schema to pull out all of the column names from that particular table name, and I'm filling up the exact same column info object for this table name. And then once that happens, I go ahead and I create that dashboard. So what's happening in create dashboard, we're pulling in the column names, the table name, etc. And then we just start filling out some of those DOM properties. So the first thing that I need to do is create a SQL Server data source. So here I have a title, a subtitle, host and database are coming from my app settings or user secrets. So if we take a look here at app settings, I have some properties. I'm putting everything in user secrets. You'll need two things. This connection string is how I'm getting all of the schema information, and then Reveal is using the database settings just like you would in your Reveal apps: host, database, username, password. So if we go back to program CS, I'm setting up my data source, then I'm creating my data source item based on if it is a query or a table name. The ID is going to be the table name. And I have to make sure here that because of the way that ChangeDataSource and ChangeDataSourceItem work, the ID needs to be specific. So I need that ID to be the name of my custom query ID so it executes correctly in ChangeDataSourceItem. And then I'm simply adding this grid visualization. So I create a grid visualization as a new grid visualization. I'm passing it the data source item, setting some properties here, and configuring some font settings. I'm setting up paging. You can change properties like this. You can even add features like fixed lines and other things. I'm setting all the columns for my grid, and then I'm adding that grid visualization to my document. This document, if we go to definition, is a new rdash document. What's an rdash document? Of course, this is a dashboard, and then I simply save that as the underlying data.rdash. Now you can do one of two things here. I am saving this as a dashboard to the server, and then I'm going to load that underlying rdash from the client. You can also just return the JSON. So there's the JSON from the document that you can just send directly back to the client. So before we look at this on the client again, let's take a look at the data source provider. And in the data source provider, if we scroll down a little bit, this is the key code. In ChangeDataSourceItem, I am checking to see if the query is populated or not. So I'm going to go ahead and get query info from that JSON file. These are just local helpers here. You can see I'm just reading that file, caching it, and determining if this is a table or a query. And then if there is a custom query in there, I am going to set the SQL data source item to that custom query, just like you would do regular code. If I wasn't doing all of this dynamic stuff, I could set custom queries to whatever the heck I want in Reveal. So I'm setting that custom query, I'm returning that, going through the Reveal lifecycle, and all is good. One other important element is if we go back to Program CS, you'll see some other helper items here like map columns to Reveal fields. So when we look at what Reveal supports in terms of data types, we have strings, booleans, time, date, number, and SQL Server is going to bring back a bunch of different data types. When you're creating the fields list, you have to make sure that you map those data types correctly. So that's just what this code is actually doing, and that's it. So it's very straightforward and very simple. Creating a grid visualization based on either the schema being read from information schemas from the incoming table or from the describe first result set from an incoming dynamically passed query from my allowed tables.json, which then allows me to create applications that will dynamically load any data into a Reveal table that I would like. And even if I wanted to, I could go into edit mode. Let's add a new visualization. I have my data source here because it's available from my dashboard. I have all of the available tables, views, and stored procedures. So let's go and grab all invoices, and maybe we'll do something like order date, and let's do freight by date. Check the box, and there I have added another visualization to this dashboard. And if I wanted to, I could even dynamically create this column chart right next to the grid. So you can dynamically create any type of chart that you'd like with the Reveal SDK DOM.